followers, it was called the Grateful Dead, and we had followers that were called Deadheads, and they were devout. I mean, they were kind of like Scientologists, only, you know, not so well groomed. And they also had something that I thought was really interesting, which was a sense of community. In my very precise terms, having come from a small agricultural town in Wyoming, where community is fundamental, like it is in a lot of places on this island. You know, where it is an extension of family, and it is something that you know that you are connected to in every way. And I felt that dying off in America was being the victim of television, which makes its money by selling the attention of the audience to the advertisers, and therefore has a strong incentive to create passion and emotions in the advertiser, in the audience, so they won't click on up or down through the 500 channels at their disposal. And that is something that will attach itself to fear, sexuality, or violence. So it's in television's best interest to create this very peculiar world that is terrifying and violent and sexy. Well, this scares most people and makes them stay at home in the suburbs, and is the very death of community, along with the modern corporation, which deals with people as though they were interchangeable machine parts. So community seemed to be dying in America every place besides where I was, and that was dying because we were running out of money to go on having small family agricultural outfits like we did. And somebody said, and I said, well, the Deadheads have a kind of community. I'd like to find out what that's like. But I'd go out in the parking lot at a show or something and start asking questions, and they knew who I was. And, you know, strange as it may seem, I had sort of a godlike power with the Deadheads, and it would completely distort the answer. It was like it was kind of like Heisenberg's principle of sociology. You know, I would so distort the thing that I was trying to study that it wasn't worth studying it that way. And also, I couldn't figure out how they had a sense of continuity, which I think communities require. You know, everything was interrupted by on to the next city, and then the tour's off the road for 3 months, and there's nothing. And my friend who worked at Stanford at that point said, well, why don't you get yourself an ARPANET account? There are a lot of deadheads on the ARPANET working for defense contractors and computer science departments in colleges that have a continuous sense of presence. They have these chat groups. And I said, all right. So I did what was necessary to configure a Hayes 300 baud modem, which without help in those days was a ditch. If you're a cattle rancher and you've got a Hayes 300 baud modem and a compact, luggable PC clone, trying to get that thing to connect to a phone line is a heroic act. But I got it to connect, and lo, I typed in Telnet, and then typed in a computer at Stanford that I knew the name of, and Shazam! I was a part of that computer. I was connected to it. I could make a hard disk spin all over the world. Now, at that point, there weren't a lot of hard disks to spin because there weren't that many machines on the internet. But I had a real holy vision at that point, which was that Teilhard de Chardin had been right, that we were making the nervous system of the collective consciousness that would far surpass what was able to communicate the calculus to both Leibniz and Newton. And I just instinctively wanted to be a big part of that. And I instinctively knew that if you take everybody in humanity, and I figured that sooner or later everybody in the human race would have an email address. And you know, you could just do the math. You could see how it was doubling. It was a doubling phenomenon. At that point, there were maybe 150,000 people with email addresses. But the next year there were 300,000. And finally it just headed up. And I think we'll have probably 2 billion before the end of next year. And it's growing. I thought if you're going to take all of humanity and put them into the same social space where they don't have clothes, and they don't have buildings, and they don't have anything really to show who they are. They don't have property, maybe. They don't have jurisdictional boundaries. Maybe you can't use law in there. Somebody ought to be writing about this, because this could be the most important thing that's ever happened since the capture of fire. I still believe that. People thought I was giddy and over-optimistic at the time. I'm not being over-optimistic. I mean, fire has brought us a lot of things. You know, not all of them great. So I knew this was going to be very important, so I dropped the whole thing with Apple, and I decided I was going to start writing about the internet and getting to know the people who were making it, and also thinking about how to deal with the social issues that were developing, and the political issues, and the cultural issues, and the economic issues. And in those days, you know, you could be a broke-down cattle rancher and rock and roll lyricist, and set yourself up as an internet guru, and it would stick just because you said you were one. I mean, the next thing I knew, I was. Life is funny. But it was helpful, because what the internet needed at that point was somebody to protect it from its natural enemies, which was that set of institutions and individuals who do now and have since Erd looked up at Og and said rock, and had both the rock to throw at him and a word for it. Those people have been using information and the ability to constrain and control the access to information for the purposes of power since that moment.